Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is the Universal Women's Network virtual series, and today is Leading Through Change, Leadership Mindset and Mental Health. Now, today we have an incredible panel lined up for you all that are viewing this later or here live with us today. Three dynamic women from diverse industries here to talk about leadership mindset and, of course, mental health, one of the hottest topics that is really under talked about, and we're starting to talk about that more and more. But as we go through this journey today, I think that some things will come up, so I invite you once again to put your comments into the comment box so our panel can answer it later. So I'm going to just jump right in if everybody's ready to go. We are live and we are recording now. So first of all, I would love to introduce Catherine Brownlee. Catherine Brownlee is from Calgary, Alberta, and you're the president and CEO of Catherine Brownlee Inc. CBI. Now, I get your newsletters often, and you have a global network. You're in the headhunting expertise, but your contacts, I think your Rolodex was into the hundreds, was it not, Catherine?
It's a good Rolodex.
Is it still a Rolodex? Do you do the paper ones?
No, it's all online now.
It's all online, because I'm like, that's a lot of contacts. I know that you spoke at one of our breakfasts I think it was probably about 3 years ago, talking about the power of networking. Do you remember that breakfast at the Calgary Petroleum Club? Yeah. And everybody was listening on the seat of their seat, listening to you talk about how you build connections, how relationships are really so key in business. So thank you so much for joining us here, Catherine. It's great that you are here to share your why you're actually diving really deeply into this mental health. So I look forward to talking about your business, how you've been coping personally through this, and why you're committed to mental health. So thank you, Catherine. Lori, I'd like to introduce you next. Lori Castleman is the President and Chief Revenue Officer for Wello. Now, Lori, you and I are connected through a longtime connection of mine, Sean Sandhurst, and I know Sean is actually on the call with us today. And, you know, from way back from my beginning days of when I started and launched my business in 2014. So it's really wonderful to see the relationships of the people that are actually still connected and then opening up the doors and opportunities with like-minded individuals. Now, Wello is something that I'm so excited to learn more about. You are a dynamic leader, of course. You've been in the business for over 20 years in leadership experience in the healthcare, group benefits, and technology domains. So you've woven all those together, and you've actually put them together into this bubble of Wello. And you guys are national and global. Is that correct?
Primarily national at this point, North American to some degree.
Okay.
It's great to be here with you today.
Fantastic. So thank you so much for joining our panel, and I look forward to diving into some of these cool, innovative things that you're doing to really elevate healthcare for everybody virtually in the workplace. And Karen, hello, nice to have you back. Karen, you are with Headversity. I know that we had a Woman of Inspiration podcast where we were able to talk about really in the beginning stages about sort of some tips and strategies as a psychologist, you know, operating, sort of navigating through this crisis on the stage of, you know, how do you manage teams? How do you manage your own mindset? How do you keep everybody focused and really help everybody through the crisis? So you've got a really interesting background, Karen. When we look at Olympians, you were Olympian, then you transferred your skills into the area of psychology, and then you've taken those two skills and you've blended them together, which is incredible, because if we look at how people get through and build their resilience, you know, we look to the Olympians that have got challenge after challenge after challenge, and you know, it's such a powerful tool to put the psychology into that. And so you've married the two with Headversity, and that's how you help individuals and organizations push forward and overcome resilience. So thank you for joining us here today. I want to
Me, and he would everywhere he went, he was always super kind and finding ways to serve and support whoever he was in contact with. So growing up with that and watching his behavior, I wanted to be just like him. I don't know if you know the country song, Little Buckaroo. That's what I felt like. I always looked up to him and wanted to be more and more like him. So with that modeling, I was able to then, when I started in sales, I would do the same thing without leading with the sale in mind. I would lead with the attitude of finding a way to serve the person that I was in front of, or finding a way to help in some way, and not in a way that I wanted something back. But what happened every time is, because you're leading with that pure intention of serving others, then so much comes back in like tenfold or hundredfold. I don't even know what it is, but that it's never a measurement back immediately. And whether that sale ever happened or not, they would always think of me and recommend me to others. And that's really how I've lived my life, my whole life, and still do today.
Amazing. Now I'm going to start with yourself, Catherine. So all these relationships that you've had the opportunity to build over this time, what was, when you first heard the news, I mean, we're going to go back, today is May the 20th, March 11th seems like a year ago now, with the amount of stuff, of daily change and the news that's happened. So what was that, when you're looking at all these relationships and you're nurturing, kind of way that you do your business, what was your initial reaction of how you're going to, pivot and move forward, or even embrace what was happening and reach out to all of your network?
Unfortunately, I wasn't prepared for it. So the first week, because I generally am the one for a lot of people, that I'm the one that they come to for consulting or support in some way, or just advice in whatever way. And within a first week of the lockdown, I actually was not prepared at all, and probably should have spoken to Karen or Lori's team. In fact, I'm a client of Willow's, so I should have reached out, and I didn't. And it caught me off guard. And by the Wednesday, I thought I was having a nervous breakdown. And then I got really clear. I spoke to my therapist and got clear about how I needed to prepare and still be there for others. And now I picture myself getting ready with armor in the morning so that it'll deflect off, and that has helped tremendously. And then a lot of mindfulness, and I'm back into doing a lot of yoga, and now that it's nice out, we're doing some nice walks, and just really doing a lot more self-care, and really making sure that I'm getting myself taken care of first. And I wasn't always doing that, and definitely was caught off guard in the first week. Now I'm good. I'm ready to serve others, which is why we're doing the CATS tracks and the other stuff that we're doing. So, but it was tough the first week for sure.
Amazing. And thank you for your honesty, because I think that in the green room we were talking before we let everybody in, that what I've realized is probably one of the most powerful things that we can do is be open and honest about how we're actually doing about it, because then we can relate to it. And from that, then we can move forward. So thank you so much, Catherine. It's great to have you on the call. And I'm really excited for the rest of the conversation. So I'm looking forward to your input today. Thank you. And Lori, so Wello, how did this March 11th affect you? Were you prepared, unprepared, personally, and then from a business perspective?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I joined Wello actually in January and took on this new role. So I would say I was still in my first 90 days effectively of getting to know the organization when this all started to happen. So I would say similarly, like not completely prepared from a personal perspective, but we've really just kind of rolled with it, I would say, to a large extent. We haven't been perfect. I certainly, I will say from a personal perspective, I'm having great days where I feel energized and I'm super productive. And then I'm also having days where it feels like Groundhog Day first thing in the morning, and I am fortunate to have a little office in my home, so I can kind of isolate in my office, but I'd say that's been some days it's been kind of a good and bad thing, because like I'm almost so self-isolated that, you know, you start to just completely disconnect with the outside world. Like I've had a lot of days, quite honestly. Well, and it's interesting, I'll say just as an aside, I have done a lot of expert webinars and panels, and I often feel, you know, like I'm extolling great advice, but I'm not necessarily taking it myself. Like I have had many instances where I'm on, you know, day 3 of not yet having been outside, and I'm giving advice about how important it is to get outside and, you know, be active every day. So I'm always really conscious of that, making sure I'm kind of following my own advice. But as I said, there's good days and bad days. From a business perspective, it's been a time of just incredible growth for us. So, you know, I feel really fortunate in that regard, because I have a lot of friends and colleagues and folks in my network who are, you know, on the flip side of that and really sort of struggling with the challenges of, you know, financial strain and stress during this time. So it certainly feels like it's a good problem to have, that we are, you know, in a very sort of high demand space and we're growing really rapidly. I mean, our biggest problem has really been hiring quickly enough and keeping up with the demand. You know, as for anyone who's not familiar with Wello on the call, we're in telemedicine and the virtual care space, and it has been, you know, one of the resources that is of highest demand in the last 2 months. So, you know, as I said, it's a good problem to have, but it's kept us all really, really, really busy.
Well, and you know what, I find that is something we, you know, they say, it's been a saying, popular saying, we're all in this together.
Yeah,
it's true. We're all in this together, and when we're moving through this, we're all experiencing something, but we're all in a different boat. You know, some people have an air mattress, not even a dinghy, but an air mattress. And some people have a life preserver. Some people have a yacht, you know. So everybody's bucket is so different. So thank you for shedding light into, and I hadn't actually stopped to think about those people that have stepped into roles in leadership positions where as a leader, you have to almost appear like you have it all together so that you feel like you don't lose that, how do you say, that strength as your leadership, right? You feel like you always have to be on. So I love that authenticity. So thank you so much for sharing. That's a great reminder. Appreciate that.
I think this has been a great equalizer this time.
Yeah.
I was saying to someone this morning, I think it has brought out the human in all of us. You know, you see it even if you're watching the morning news, right? You're seeing these like celebrity broadcasters in their backyards with, you know, garbage in the background or kids' toys or whatnot. So, you know, I definitely think it has really been an equalizer, and it has really helped to bring people together, because we're seeing that other side of folks that we work with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, no, I actually, I'm very much filled with gratitude, you know, and I thank my lucky stars for every piece of adversity that I've ever had in my life, because I'm like, bring it on, right? It doesn't make it's the way I solve problems now is through that, but doesn't make it that much easier to go through, for sure. But thank you for sharing. And I'm dying to dive into this a little bit more about Wello and what you're doing with your teams to educate everybody here and to help and support them. So Karen, you know, we had a wonderful interview a little while ago, but I'll get you to jump in. And again, you know, what were your reactions when this pandemic really, you know, took effect, and how are you leading your team in your organization?
Yeah, so I mean, I think, and Catherine and Lori both spoke to, we have the businesswoman in us. We have the family person, the mother and wife in my case, and we have our own selves that we have to take care of. So I think when we're thrown into it, it really had to manage things from all those different levels. So Headversity, we are a digital mental wellness platform that is designed to measure, track, and train resilience in the workplace. So we were set up for this exact scenario. And so I think from a a business standpoint, you know, part of it, one of our co-founders is a psychiatrist, and the whole idea was we knew we couldn't address mental health in the same way that we have been, which is really looking at the pathology and helping people when they're sick. We need to be preventive and proactive, and we need to be able to get people access. And so I think having a digital platform, having a resilience trainer in people's pockets, it was timely, and it reinforced being a mission-driven company that we're on the right track and doing some of the right things. So I think from our business standpoint, it's how do we make sure we're hitting the right people, and how do we support our communities in the best way that we can. Another role of mine is I'm the lead mental performance consultant, sports psychologist for the Canadian Olympic team. And so, you know, in those moments when you're thrown into this, the Olympic Games are maybe canceled, maybe on, I'm leading a charge of mental performance consultants across the country to help support national teams. And so in that moment, in sport, we're used to uncertainty, unpredictability, you know, adapting and being flexible. And so, however, it's usually for an Olympic Games, which is 3 weeks long. And so it's the length of time in this. And so I think for me personally, you know, I'm a helper, I dive right in, I support. And so I got lost in the mix. Taking care of my family, I'm taking care of the businesses. I wasn't taking care of me, even though I'm almost, you know, making sure I'm doing my mindfulness in the morning, I'm doing my exercise, but I'm burning myself out by doing all the extra things to make sure I can handle everything. So there was a moment where I needed to take a pause. I needed to change some things, and I've actually made some drastic life changes in terms of some career ideas. And it's been fantastic. I think, as Lori said, it's an equalizer that's really help to shine the light on what's most important, where our passions really lie, and where we want to direct our energy going into the future.
Thank you for that honesty. And I you know, I love the fact that you all are being so open and honest with the dialogue. That is extremely helpful for everyone. And I'm going to say that I have a share too. I'm, as leader, I mean, you try and do everything, but I got to tell you, Lori, like you, sometimes there was like 3 days where I'm like, nope, I'm not going outside because I have so much to do. So before I realized it, I was rising when it was dark, and I was going to bed when it was dark. And so I kind of had to force myself out of that thing where, okay, I have to get that walk done. I have to at least walk. Like letting the dog out for a pee is not enough of an exercise, right? Or doing chores. So I would make sure that I had strenuous housework, so my house is really clean. And then I'd end up going for walks late at night. But I guess you have to do what you need to do just to get into that right mindset. Because as a leader, if we're not healthy, we can't help others, right? Mm-hmm. So now I would love to talk about your teams, you know, and the people in your world. So we've identified, you know, that we're struggling with this too, right? With all of the changes, working from home, family, no family, quarantined, and the constant uncertainty as a leader, because you have to have the answers. People are looking forward to the answers from you and to make the decisions to pivot, right? So, you know, Catherine, if we can just, you know, start with you, how have you been sort of leading your team through that process with you?
Well, in our case, we had the model of working remotely ever since the September 11 tragedy. So we just had practices in play, although it did change obviously with the forced isolation. So we weren't able to get together for our regular Fridays like we used to, which was our weekly check-in. But you know, we moved to Zoom. So it was really being more mindful of the practices that we already had in play, which are a daily strategy every morning, and it includes a wide variety of topics, not even necessarily just the business. It can also be what's happening in our lives, you know, what we feel like sharing. And we do that with the whole team every morning, and it's something that keeps us all connected. And it's an email there, but then we pick up the phone, we get on Zoom, we meet where we can with the discipline, and we just encourage each other. And I feel very fortunate that the team that we have all have their own businesses too, so they're leaders in their own right. So I don't feel like there's any management required. It's really just working alongside some great people.
Amazing. So the switch was relatively smooth, where you were able to lead them through how you normally lead your team. So what a blessing to be virtual.
Yeah.
You know, like I've heard other stories where, you know, some people were, you know, I don't know if Tara Wilson is on. She is with Income Access, and they had just finished their disaster recovery with their whole organization, which is, you know, over 3,000 people. So they went seamless to work at home, like without a bug, because they were so prepared, you know, which is really interesting, right? So, you know, I think that we can be thankful that we are on a large part very virtual, but thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. Lori, and how was that? How have you been leading your team and managing through this crisis and these changes?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a couple of things that have been really important. The number one is just communication. You know, I've talked about this a lot, both within our team and also like externally with clients and folks in our network. You know, I can't say enough. I think we all probably can't say enough about the importance of communication, you know, in running effective businesses. But I think in times like this, more so than ever. So one of the practices that we have now sort of brought in, and it's a daily practice, is a morning huddle. So we connect as teams or as groups for a quick 15-minute touch base every day. You know, and I actually have someone from my team who's on the call today, and, you know, I'll say nice things about her, not because she's on the call, but because she's done a phenomenal job of leading those huddles. Really, it's just an opportunity for the group to touch base. And I have shared with them that it's become a little highlight in my day every day, just to really sort of see everyone's faces at the, you know, beginning of the day. It's a nice way just to really quickly reconnect. And our agenda is just, you know, any kind of sort of kudos or celebrations or acknowledgements that anyone wants to give to someone on the team. We celebrate if there are any wins the day prior. Those can be big or small. And then we just take a few minutes to highlight any obstacles or barriers that someone may be looking for support from the group around. And that's it, really. It's, you know, it's a quick story here or there and an acknowledgement, and then we carry on with the day. So I think that's been really important. And then as a broader organization, we have brought in virtual town halls. We do them every 2 weeks. We try and make them fun. So we've done, you know, wear a funny hat to town hall and that type of thing. And again, lots of celebrations of the great people on our team and really like the growth and success we've seen over the last few months. But again, I think the most important thing is just that connection, right? It's just a little moment of time carved out every 2 weeks for us all to just connect as a group.
You know what I really love about hearing from all of these different perspectives is, you know, they always say communicate, 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 but it really is kind of like communication, right, is really key. You touched on another thing about acknowledgement, and sort of, you know, you realize through these tough times, if you give somebody the keys to drive the car, will they sit in the car or take the car and drive it? They're going to drive the car. Right. And, you know, what I'm hearing from a lot of teams and leaders is they see all of the leaders that are just coming up with the innovative ideas and really kind of taking charge, because they know that there's gaps to fill, and they are natural leaders being born that are rising to the top. So, you know, it's really lovely to see that those opportunities are happening and that they're acknowledged for that. So that's really cool to see, because these are the crisis times, are when your leaders come to the surface, right? And not meaning that everybody's job's not important, but there's some people that will say, okay, I'll take that baton and run with it without a lot of direction. Great, thank you. And so Karen, your organization, how have, you know, what has been your strategy?
Yeah, and I think I can speak to where we're at Headversity, some of the principles we operate from, and then really I coach a lot of leaders on how do we manage through crisis, or what are the things that we're doing, and I think some of the perspectives that we hold, at Headversity and that I recommend is really human first, task second. And so it's really attending to the person that's within your organization, really understanding individual needs, understanding the needs. So there might be a question that is unanswerable or irritating to a leader, but really what's underneath that, and where's that person at? So I think that leads to that connection and communication. So making sure you have a process. So whether it's daily huddles or bi-weekly touch points, a way to connect and make sure that the communication is going. And I think with that, I really like what Lori said, and bouncing off that, we do that quite a bit. And that's that sport for you, is really to look at what's good. Our brains are built to scan the world for danger and threat, and they're lit up. We need to balance that with looking at what are those opportunities? What are the amazing things that have happened as a result of this time in the sport world? This is an incredible time to build resilience, mental fitness that they will need for their sport performance. So I think kind of housing it in that way. And then I think lastly, it's really that purpose. What's our purpose as a team? What are we really doing in this moment? And what's my individual purpose? I've got a once in a lifetime opportunity. I can really make an impact. And it's not about me, it's about what's outside of me. And that kind of helps to keep us going. So those are a few things that we're continuing to keep our minds on, in addition to what I'm helping people navigate through.
Amazing. So I really love that message that you're sharing about, if you go back that, and this is the ultimate time to say, I always think that the lessons that we learn in life, the adversity that we actually experience, those are true gifts. And this is probably the biggest gift right now, because we actually realize our core strength and the resilience that comes out of it. So that is super great. Everybody gets to experience that, just putting the sunshine back into this whole experience, right? So thank you for, kind of putting that into a great bucket that we can actually all take a little bit more and apply to our worlds and our networks. So my next one is, best practices. We touch on this just a little bit, but, we have an opportunity with all of this knowledge that we're learning from all of these things that are happening. So let's talk about these best practices and these emerging practices. Like, we have a golden nugget. Like, we should be surveying everything right now, documenting everything that we're doing, because we're finding out better ways of doing things. So Catherine, what are some of these emerging practices that have emerged for you and in your business?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, is it business or personal?
Well, actually, let's touch on both, because this is, I want to get into the leader and the leadership. So let's touch on personal and the business.
Okay. So as everybody knows, the swimming pools got closed, and that was my meditation and mental health and physical health every day. I went every morning. And then with that closing, and then the combination of that week of crazy crises in my own brain, I didn't actually get into my new practices of now some awesome yoga. There's some great online yoga that is for swimmers, so I'm able to keep up with at least what the positive results were from my swimming. It's not the same, because I love the water, but it certainly helped. So that's a morning practice for me. I need it in the morning, because my mental health doesn't do very well without a morning routine. That's good. And then I actually am pretty strict on my diet. Sometimes on the weekend I'll go crazy, but usually it's I'm allergic to a lot of things, so I stay away from a lot of the stuff that I'm supposed to, and that really helps too. Feel good about that. And then giving to others. I actually, the serving others for me, when I was really young, I had a lot of depression and mental health issues, and they even thought that I was bipolar at one point. And until I started serving others and getting outside of my own self and realized how fortunate I was, once I did that, it changed my whole attitude about life and how I can show up for people. And turns out I'm not bipolar. That's personal. And then from the business, it's again, that daily practice of checking in, sharing daily strategies, supporting our team. We're all really good friends too. So when we know that one of us is struggling, we really wrap our arms around that person and really support them. So that's my best practices.
Amazing. And then thank you for your honesty. I know that sometimes, you know, we think about, we're just sharing this in this short world, but, you know, this will be shared and we have, you know, people that are listening and viewing. So I think it's really important that we all embrace that authenticity of the reality that mental health is really, really important, and it's hard. We all have some sort of buckets where we have to weave through it. So thank you for sharing so much. I appreciate that. And Lori, you know, so I'll have you maybe touch on a little bit about your personal best practices, emerging practices, and some with your business as well.
Yeah, so I would say, you know, as I said at the top of the hour, I have not been perfect in terms of best practices. I would say I know what works as a great schedule, but, you know, I haven't necessarily been able to adhere to that great best practice every day throughout the last few months. So, you know, one of the things I'd say I've like adapted to or employed in the last few weeks is giving myself a little bit of a break on that front. Because I tend to sort of beat myself up a little bit around like, I know this is the right thing to do. I know this is gonna, you know, sort of set me up for a really successful day. And, you know, if I don't get the exercise in the morning, you know, I start to feel a little guilty, and that's how I'm going into my day, which I think is not productive either. It's almost like a double whammy if you do that to yourself. So what I've really done, I would say in the last few weeks, is just sort of exercised a bit more forgiveness for the moments of lack of structure because of the time that we're in and the demands that are coming at us. And then just tried to really commit to, even if I don't, you know, find that time in the morning, I'm going to carve out at least 45 minutes for myself at some point of my day. And I have 2 teenagers at home with me. So it's often, you know, it's a meeting in the middle of the day where it's just a quick 30-minute power walk. And I find that is an amazing reset. And just knowing that if I haven't done it at the start of the day, but that it's coming and I've set a time for it in the day, you know, it makes for a much better day all around. And I would say, like Catherine, nutrition and sleep are really important to me as well. So even if I'm not getting the activity in, I'm usually pretty solid on, you know, getting a good 7 to 8 hours of sleep and making sure I'm drinking my water and eating healthy. And also not so great on the weekends. I tend to give myself a lot of forgiveness on Sundays around how I eat. I think you need that a little bit to go back into a more sort of strict week. And then I would add, I guess, from a business perspective, one of the most important things for us over the last few months has been really listening to our customers. So not only are we needing to adapt and going through a lot of change and a lot of pressure to respond to that change, they are as well. And, you know, we serve clients in many different industries. And I think, you know, just a small example, I would say going into late March, what we started to hear was that clients were looking to make decisions around virtual care support for their employees, but you know, those needed to be really quick decisions and quick launches, which is not really how we were set up traditionally. It's usually a 3 to 4 week launch period. But recognizing how critically important this was to our client, you know, we took a step back and literally did like an overnight kind of innovation process and created a cadence where we could do 48-hour launches for even our largest new clients. And that went a really long way in supporting our ability to win new business. So it brought more growth. I'd say there have now been many examples of that have served us really well over the last 2 months in responding to client needs and, you know, sort of optimizing and you'll know what I mean when I say this, right? It's don't waste a good crisis, right? So we have been able to optimize during this really difficult time when we know we've had a service that is really important to businesses and to employees, so that we can get access as quickly as we can, to as many new clients as we can.
Amazing. And I love that saying. Actually, that was one of our, never let a good disaster go to waste.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like utilize this crisis and pivot and go, because everybody understands you can't wait 2 weeks. You can't wait a month. You need it today.
Yeah.
So those that are able to adapt to that and pivot to it are going to definitely benefit from that moving forward. So thank you so much for sharing about that. I know that you have a program, and I'll talk about moving forward in a little bit, so maybe I'll hold back on that question, but I do have another question to ask you about how you're moving forward with some of the plans that you're doing. So Karen, let's see what you've been doing with, with personally and professionally.
Yeah, so I mean, I think personally, the beautiful thing is we've developed this resilience methodology and model, and so it's almost creating a daily practice around some of those things. And actually, Bill Howitt, he's a thought leader in workplace psychology. He's amazing. Read his stuff, Globe and Mail. But yeah, he's fantastic. Anyway, and so he validated this. But essentially, there's a few buckets on a daily basis. Is number one, I think what we're all talking about is that physical health. So the sleep, the nutrition, the physical exercise. So what am I doing there? There's got to be a daily practice in that. The mental fitness and the resilience skills. So those could be anything from, I'm going to journal just to connect with what's going on. I personally have a daily mindfulness practice. I wake up and I look forward to my 15 minutes every morning. And I put that throughout the day. So that would be some examples. The other piece in that needs to be on a daily basis or that weekly basis is social connection. And so I have a little beautiful 7-year-old, and she energizes at times and sometimes demands, but making sure my family and then friends, and then lastly that purpose piece, right? So it's really kind of getting back to what's the why within all this. So I kind of cycle through that within the week, sometimes on a daily, to make sure that I'm embedding. And I think when we look at NASA, they throw astronauts for extended periods of isolation. They have a very clear process, scientific routine, which involves structure, which involves, some of these things. So I think the routine, the structure, with some ebb and flow. I definitely have my weekends like Catherine and Lori with my eating patterns, because you need to give yourself manage those boundaries every now and again. So that would be on the personal level. And I think on the business side, when we think back to March 11th or that week, it's going to become where were you when? It's one of those where were you when moments. We're all going to know. It's going to be in our kids' history books. And so, we've had to adapt quickly. And Headversity is, we're framing that as the brave new workplace. And so leaders needed to rise. They needed to lead with resilience. And we needed to adopt a few new things. And so the brave new workplace is really a mentality that has a few attributes associated with it, such as embracing technology. How do we do things in a digital distributed way, such as how do we embrace a new routine? We're now all working from home. We don't have the commute times, but I need some separation. I had one client who would take a shower, eat breakfast, go out of the house, walk around the block, and come back and then go into the office just to create that separation. So we need to manage those new routines. And then I think the other piece is unfazed by the remote working, right? So there's a lot of different things that we can adopt. And I think this has kind of highlighted that in terms of how we're going to work and what the new normal is going to be.
Wow, I'm sitting on the edge of my seat right now thinking how grateful I am to have this knowledge, to be surrounded by this knowledge. So thank you so much for each of you sharing, because it's really important. I mean, the perspectives, everybody has just a slightly different perspective on it, and everybody has a different way of doing it, But if we, like you said, put it into buckets, there's certain things, and routine is so important. So thank you so much for sharing, Karen. That was really important information. Now, I know that this whole hour has gone by very fast. I have still so many questions. So I'm going to say, I really hope that we can actually have a part 2 to this, and maybe have you all back again, maybe in 3 weeks, or perhaps for the Success Summit that we're planning June the 10th, right? So I think that might be, because so much has changed every single day, things change. But before we sort of wrap up and start and look at some of these questions, and I have to say that I haven't even looked at the questions yet, because this has been such a great conversation. I want to talk about the mental health piece of it, and how we can do to support each other, our communities, our families, our teams. And so, Catherine, you know, I reached out to you very strategically, because I knew that you had made a commitment to really help support, find a way of really bringing awareness to mental health. So I'd like you to really, if you can share a little bit about what made you take that step to make a public declaration that this is something so important.
Well, Karen knows I've been in around the circles a lot with mental health, and the pre-COVID, I had brought several of them together to try and introduce them to one another. And so that was pre that. And I actually thought that's where my role was going to end. And even, in fact, right, Karen, I got up and went, okay, you guys talk amongst yourselves. I got to go. I literally left the meeting. I'm like, I'm good. I got enough volunteer hours anyway. But then the unfortunate tragedy with the Gartner family. Greg was a very close friend of mine for 12 years. And I highly respected and loved him, and recently met his beautiful wife, who he loved and adored. And I know that he loved his children more than he loved his own self. So what happened on that day, that morning, told me that if that can happen to him, it can happen to anybody I know, including me. So I decided that I was going to take all that sadness and anger and all the feelings that I couldn't even have words for, and direct it to something, because I knew I could identify the feelings, and I knew that I needed to do something with it to be able to cope, but then really shine a light on the shadow of the darkness of where mental health on the negative side can go. And I will dedicate the rest of my life, every opportunity I have to tell the story about how great he was, I will. So yeah, that's why I'm going to support that. And just prior to COVID as well, my sweetheart and I took a brain course by Dr. Amen out of the US. And it was a 6-week course, and it taught us a lot of the success stories that he's had. And then since then, I was actually introduced to Dr. Corey Deacon here in Calgary as well. And he does a lot of the brain mapping, takes a look at the brain, and then assesses and looks at every human. Actually, I've got him on Cat's Track at one point, and he said, one of his friends said, Corey, it's just like, we're like snowflakes. There's not one other that's like the other. So for brain health, we need to look at all of our brains completely different than any others. Like, one prescription for antidepressant is not going to fix all people. And I'm not saying prescriptions are not don't have an application, but what I'm hoping is that the conversations will continue. And I know that Wello and what Karen's work does at Headversity are way progressive. So we need to pay attention to the progressive leaders that are in this space and start finding ways to end mental health issues by being on the forefront of prevention and what can we do for that person and their brain.
So firstly, thank you. like, as I'm sitting here kind of stifling back, you know, I just want to say thank you so much for your, you know, having that voice and using your voice for good, because I think it really matters. And that is why I had you on this call today, really, because I wanted to shed that light that it could be the person next door to us. It could be us. It could be the person in our community, in our network, in our businesses. So, you know, thank you so much for sharing that. And this will not be the end of the conversation, because as I say, as a women's organization and our network, we really think this is really important information to talk about. So thank you so much for sharing. I'm getting teary-eyed. Like, this is just, it's very meaningful. So thank you very much, Karen. Sorry, Catherine. I'm even getting flustered now talking about it. Okay, let's switch. Lori.
Yes.
You're now into this, you've been in this industry for so long. Has anything changed about sort of your passion for it, to be an advocate? What things, maybe I'll just get you to talk a little bit about your passion for committing to helping people through this.
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to echo what you're saying, Catherine. Thank you for sharing your story so openly. I mean, I think that's really what these types of forums are so, you know, it's what makes them so powerful, right? It's what they're so valuable for, is not just the networking, but also just the connecting, you know. And I think when people can tell the personal stories, it is the best form of connection, because we all find sort of components where we can relate to one another when we open up and share those stories. So thank you for that. I would say, to your point, Monica, has my passion changed? Not at all. I would say year after year, my passion for health and employee health and mental health only grows through lots of different experiences. I happen to have an experience very early on in my career, and we won't have time to go through all of it, but I will just say it was an instance where an employee really needed support from a mental health perspective. And they had reached out to me at that point, and I was really ill-equipped to properly support them. And I'd say that's where my passion started. And I have looked throughout my career as or at the workplace as this incredible vehicle to support the people who are in it every day. And I think, you know, it's incumbent upon all of us who are colleagues and leaders and, you know, sort of managers of people in those organizations to really just sort of be trained, you know, put your hand up and look for training for yourself, but also call out to your organization to get that training. And if you're in a position where you're, you know, you have, you know, some authority to make those decisions on behalf of other leaders or managers in your organization, get people the training and the resources that they need so that they can respond to those moments in a really sort of well-equipped fashion and be there as a source of support and as a resource to people. You never know when someone maybe is going to open up, and, you know, if you're on the receiving end of someone opening up and really seeking help for the first time, the last thing you want to be is like improperly prepared to be a great support to that individual who's chosen you to open up to. And so, you know, I would just say now more than ever, I think we are going to see, you know, an increase in the amount of need within workplaces, whether it's for individuals or for their families. Large rise in children's mental health concerns now as well. And so, you know, the fine point on this is I've become more impassionate than ever. You know, I think there's incredible resources. We should all really look out and find out what those public resources are, and also what the resources are within our organizations to be communicating and empowering others with them.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And I really do hope that we have that opportunity, like I said, to do this again, because I'd love to hear about the stories, that turning point, that pivot that sort of helped you through and kind of made that passion more like purposeful, right? The wake up, because I think that everybody can appreciate that. You never know when you're going to be the person that will help somebody through a really big pivot, right? A turning point in their life. So thank you. And Karen, last remarks with yourself.
Yeah, thanks. And Catherine and Lori, I mean, your stories are they resonate deeply and reinforce the reasons why we're doing what we're doing. And that's the thing. No one is immune from mental illness. And we have to, like Lori's saying, we have to take a proactive and preventative approach to this. The stress that's produced right now, it can be very adaptive. Helps us meet the demands of our environment, helps us focus, helps us stay motivated. It is meant for only a couple hours, not 2-3 weeks. And so training our mind, training the gray, mitigating some of those stress responses are going to be so critical. And so it's almost like imparting psychological hygiene on a daily basis, just like we do with our physical and our own health. There's something that's been talked about, and I don't know if people have heard about it, but it's been thrown out there, of the echo pandemic. So we have the physical health pandemic coming, and then the echo pandemic is basically going to be the mental health spike that we may see following this. And we're already seeing those. There was a quote from the Canadian Mental Health Association in Nova Scotia pre-shootings. The call center was at about 25 a day. It shot up to 700 a day. And so we are already seeing the need. And so there's not going to be enough practitioners. And as a psychologist, I worry. So let's get in front of it. Let's start to do that daily psychological hygiene, having your own repertoire. Like Lori and Catherine have both said, let's educate people. Let's make them knowledgeable. Let's make it accessible to all, so that we can get people the support that they need, and understanding everyone's kind of going to be in their own bucket around that. So your physical health, the mental fitness and resilience strategies you do on a daily basis, that social connection is so important. And plus, what's your purpose? What is this about for you? What contribution can you make during this time, right? So just there as a starting point, I think would be great.
Well, I'd like to once again say thank you. I'm filled with deep gratitude for having you all take time out of your busy schedules, because I know that there's so much going on with each of you in your own lives personally, but with your businesses and pivoting and getting to that new normal. You know, I just want to say thank you so much. We're not going to have an opportunity to address all of the questions here today, because I want to be mindful of all of the schedules. It's now, you know, noon. So we only scheduled an hour. We could have 2 hours easily. So I will wrap it up, and we can answer the questions along with the replay to this actual recording the virtual series here. So I'll make sure that everybody, that your questions will be answered. If you had some, I saw some links shared, we can share some of those links as well. So you'll have more than enough tools and resources, as well as the opportunity to connect. So thank you once again to Catherine Brownlee for joining us here today, Lori Caswell and Karen MacNeill. All of your links will be shared, of course, with the replay that we have the opportunity to. So thank you everybody for joining us. This was a fantastic virtual series today, Universal Women's Network virtual series. We are running them weekly, interviewing leaders across Canada and beyond, and sharing perspectives, how we're adapting to through and leading through crisis, and touching on these points. As I announced, we are building our Success Summit that was originally scheduled for the fall. We're going to ramp it up, because we want to give everybody that reset, restart, refocus button to help female entrepreneurs, specifically helping female entrepreneurs kind of reset and navigate through. So I would love you guys all to be a part of that. Stay tuned for more information. And I'm going to say thank you so much. I'm going to turn it off to the green room, so I'll ask the panelists to stay on, but I want to thank you again, all of you, for joining us here today. I'll send the replays and also the links to all of the questions with you. So thanks, everyone. So thank you so much for joining the Universal Women's Network virtual series. We have our virtual series right now through the pandemic to support business entrepreneurs, professionals through COVID. And that's connecting leaders from across Canada and beyond, offering perspectives of how we lead through change. So I look forward to answering any questions for you, but please subscribe to our newsletter so you can find out about more of our events and, of course, Women of Inspiration Awards and our Success Summit. So thank you for joining us today.